Sports Talk with Craig Ballard. Thank you for joining me. We're taking our weekly look at handing out some game balls and some lame balls in the week that was in the National Football League. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's hand out some game balls to start our week here. Let's start with the Houston Texans offensive line. Absolutely, folks. That is a round of applause being handed for this offensive line. Multiple game balls now that this offensive line has earned in the 2011 season, and this past week was no exception to how brilliant they have been. This was again a Texans offensive line that opened holes to the tune of 2 running backs over 100 yards this past week, folks. Extremely remarkable. You had Arian Foster, 19 carries, 124 yards. Ben Tate, their other running back as well, 12 carries for 115 yards. Both running backs finding the house, both running backs with a touchdown behind that fantastic Texans offensive line. This offense hasn't missed a beat at all. They're missing all-world wide receiver Andre Johnson. Hasn't mattered because the offensive line has been doing such a remarkable job for Gary Kubiak. Kubiak in his, 24th year there, seemingly at Houston, running the Texans. But he's got this offensive line working extremely, extremely well together. One of the top offensive lines in the National Football League. Extremely impressive unit there, getting it done again this past week. And actually, another set of game balls to be handed out to a different offensive line as well. How about the New Orleans Saints offensive line, folks? Yeah, absolutely. Round of applause here as well. Absolutely. The Saints offensive line missing their starting running back, Mark Ingram, last week in a win, and a big win, a bounce-back win after their previous loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Coming back this past weekend in a big win at home, and that offensive line really getting it done. Didn't matter that this top running back wasn't there. Didn't matter. They opened up holes to the tune of 195 rushing yards this last week for the Saints. Wow, extremely impressive. And they kept the would-be pass rushers off of Drew Brees. Drew Brees wasn't sacked at all. 0 sacks yielded by this offensive line this past week as well. Extremely impressive effort and a big win by the New Orleans Saints. We have it, and in that same game, we're going to hand out our first lame ball of the week to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Actually going to be, if you saw that game, I mean, you know that there are several lame balls to go around here. Not the effort that we were looking for or anticipating from the Buccaneers. Certainly not the effort or execution that Raheem Morris, their head coach, was looking for from the team this past week. Really not a good game at all. A loss to New Orleans, and this is now in the last 4 weeks. 3 losses in the last 4 weeks for this Tampa Bay team, and they've really not only come back to the pack, they've really distanced themselves in that tough AFC South. This once was a 4-2 team, completely in the thick of things for a playoff spot. Now all the way down to 4-4, and in this last week, really a putrid effort by this team as a whole. Didn't get the job done at all. The previous opponent for New Orleans, St. Louis Rams, they showed the blueprint on how you beat this New Orleans team. This New Orleans team is the worst in the NFL against the run, and they had to put the ball in Steven Jackson's hands and let Steven Jackson tap dance on that defense 2 weeks ago for a win. Fast forward to this last week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their running back, LeGarrette Blount, is basically Steven Jackson Part 2. It's basically the same type of runner, and you would think that they would have been opening up the running game for LeGarrette Blount to run over this putrid Saints rush defense. LeGarrette Blount actually had 5.5 yards per carry, but why we're handing out a lame ball, and to be honest with you, a blame ball to this offensive coordinator, to this offensive set that they were running, is they only gave LeGarrette Blount 13 carries this last week. Again, coming off a week where St. Louis gave you the blueprint on how you beat a New Orleans team. So definite lame ball / blame ball going on in Tampa Bay for that performance there. Back to the game balls, as we had an extremely impressive performance by Atlanta Falcon rookie wide receiver Julio Jones, really showing why the Falcons made the draft day move they made in this past draft, this 2011 draft, trading all the way up to number 6 overall to pick Julio Jones. You know, they wanted to pair him for Matt Ryan. They wanted to pair him with Roddy White, have those 2 dynamic wide receivers on the outside, with Michael Turner in the running game for something up the middle, and the passing game over the middle, of course, the outstanding Tony Gonzalez. So they thought it was a real piece of their puzzle, and this last week, for the first time all year, first time in 2011, we really saw the Falcons, in particular Matt Ryan, utilize Julio Jones. Now, I mean, we would say that Julio Jones hasn't been there for a couple weeks. He's been out injured, yes, but a marvelous performance this last week by Jones, and they were looking for him too, and looking for him on deep, big plays. He had a 50-yard touchdown and an 80-yard touchdown, his first 2 touchdowns as a pro. So a really big day for Julio Jones, really impressive. 2 highlight reel touchdowns in a big road win for Atlanta, so pretty impressed there. A game ball as well, believe it or not, folks. I mean, you already know this is the first one this year for the Miami Dolphin coaching staff. Game ball for the Dolphins coaching staff. I'll tell you something, folks, I really liked what I saw this last week. It was a brilliant game plan drawn up on both sides of the ball for how to stop that Kansas City offense and for how to move the football against that Kansas City defense. It was really well drawn up and really well executed. What I love, they got Brandon Marshall involved. They made the easy passes for Matt Moore to get him rolling and in rhythm. Reggie Bush, over 140 yards, all-purpose yards, so they continue to get him involved these last couple weeks. I really like that. But what really impressed me here, folks, this last week about this Miami Dolphin team and why the coaching staff in particular getting a game ball, Anthony Fasano. If you're a Dolphin fan, you've probably been like me. This was long, luxurious hair at one point, folks. I've been pulling it out with the Miami Dolphins, begging for them to get Anthony Fasano back involved in the passing game. If you take it back to 2007 when they had that, or 2008, sorry, when they had that fantastic year coming off of the 1-15 season, and then remember they went 11-5 under Pennington, won that division, actually made the playoffs, believe it or not, if you remember all the way back then. Well, that was all on the strength of Anthony Fasano. That was the strength of finding him and utilizing him in the red zone. Chad Pennington created a marvelous chemistry with Fasano and was using him as a weapon on every down, and in particular in the red zone. And the Dolphins finally got back to that this last week. Anthony Fasano with a pair of receiving touchdowns. So really well done there. Really impressed there by the Miami coaching staff. First time all year I've been impressed by the Miami coaching staff, of course. We've got first time we've given out game balls and lane balls to the same player before. Never like this. Patrick Peterson, the rookie cornerback and punt returner for the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of people, folks, had him as number 1 on the draft board, even ahead of a Cam Newton, even ahead of a Von Miller. This past draft, Peterson going to the Arizona Cardinals. Lane ball, his pass interference penalty at the end of regulation sets up their opponent, St. Louis, with a game-winning field goal opportunity. Now Calais Campbell blocks that field goal, so fine, so no harm, no foul so far. Then in overtime, St. Louis punts the football to Peterson and the Cardinals. Peterson backs up, fields the ball at his 1. Any special team coach will tell you, folks, they'll be as bold as I am pulling their hair out. Man, that's a golden rule. If you're going to field that punt at the 1, you let it go. Period. That's a golden, absolute, steadfast rule for punt returners. And if you look at our boy Patrick Peterson here now, he was able to take that ball at the 1, and here's how he gets the game ball. He took it all the way 99 yards for the game-winning touchdown in overtime. So sure, we are going to hand out a game ball there. It followed some lane balls, but luckily for Peterson and Arizona, it certainly didn't cost them the game. In fact, his balls, if you want to put it that way, won them the game in overtime with that marvelous highlight reel return. Really exciting stuff there. Game ball, Aaron Rodgers. Should we say another game ball for Aaron Rodgers? He's been on this list numerous times. Returning to California, returning to his home state of California. Well, he put on a show in front of friends and family as his Packers won their 17th straight football game, folks, and that includes playoffs and the Super Bowl. So, unbelievable run. What you have to love here about Aaron Rodgers, how about 21 for 26, extremely efficient, 4 touchdowns versus 0 interceptions. I mean, video game numbers. And you gotta love that 17 straight wins. I mean, we can put how many of them on Aaron Rodgers' plate, on Aaron Rodgers' shoulders here. Unbelievable. This is a Green Bay secondary, folks, that continues to be absolutely burnt. It's a secondary that continues to give up big play after big play after big play. But 17 wins in a row. How is that possible? Because Aaron Rodgers continues to be the man, continues to be carving out his MVP 2011, and this past weekend was certainly no exception there. Another a guy that we like, and another guy with multiple game balls here. This is the 5th week in a row now for Frank Gore, earning himself a game ball. 5th straight week now for Frank Gore where he's eclipsed 100 yards rushing. This is the first time in quite some time that he didn't find the house. He didn't find the end zone this past week, but still, game ball for going over 100 yards for the 5th straight week for Frank Gore. Believe it or not, folks, that's a San Francisco 49er record. I mean, this is no Johnny-come-lately organization who doesn't have a history of running backs. O.J. Simpson ran the football for the San Francisco 49ers. Remember Ricky Waters in the late 90s and early 2000s was a fantastic running back for them as well. And of course, maybe you've heard of Roger Craig, one of the all-time great running backs. And none of these guys were able to do what Frank Gore did. 5 straight games of 100 yards, San Francisco 49er record. Extremely impressed there. Final lane ball to hand out this week for the Week 9 NFL game balls and lane balls goes to William Gay. William Gay, the cornerback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you saw that game, folks, big old game on Sunday night. I mean, major implications here as far as tiebreakers are concerned. This was a big game for Pittsburgh to win, for them to maintain their status as the elite, as the number 1 seed in the AFC. Well, they did not win that game, and in fact, it was Baltimore now sweeping that season series from Pittsburgh 2 games to none. A big win for Baltimore. And the way they came about that win was Joe Flacco to Torrey Smith in particular on that final drive. And that final drive is where William Gay has earned this lane ball this last week, folks. If you saw it, he was completely outclassed, completely outmatched by the rookie Torrey Smith, including the game-winning play. William Gay himself will tell you, I mean, that was a nightmare series for him. Probably the worst of his career, to be totally honest with you, in a big game, too. So, unfortunately, that was a lame ball. Sports Talk with Craig Ballard. Our final blame ball for this past week that we saw goes to the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff. Not often, and you may agree or disagree, I know that Andy Reid has his detractors out there. I would say it's not often that you find Andy Reid on a blame ball list, but certainly this past weekend, folks. I mean, you're looking at, this was a Philadelphia team that A, was a must-win game, B, they're the number one rushing team in football, and they're going up against the Chicago Bears. The Bears yield 5.2 yards per carry on the ground. New Orleans is the only team worse in football at 5.3 yards per carry. So 0.1 is the only thing that separates the Bears. 0.1 yard per carry is the only thing that separates Chicago from being the worst team in the NFL against the run. Here comes Philly, the number one team against the run, and they're at home. Do they feed LaShawn McCoy, their absolute stud, their fantastic wide receiver, running back, the one who truly makes that offense go? Do they feed him? Absolutely not, folks. How about 16 carries? And we know this is a Philadelphia team that has had won 2 straight football games to seemingly right their ship. Well, they were feeding the running back on McCoy the ball 30 times in those 2 wins. So to not follow that game plan that has been so successful for you is a head scratcher. And B, of all teams not to run the football against, you're at home against the Bears. Bears are terrible against the run, folks. To not have taken advantage of that, wow, really surprising, really disappointing, a definite blame ball to Andy Reid and the coaching staff there at Philadelphia Eagles, folks. This dream team, as we know Vince Young dubbed them at the beginning of the year, it's been an absolute nightmare. And at 4-4, just a shitload of trouble that they're in right now in Philadelphia. Sports Talk with Craig Ballard. I am your boy Craig Ballard. This was Week 9 game balls and lame balls in the NFL. You know, in a few days here, we'll have our Week 10 picks and tidbits up for you as well, so hope you enjoy that. If you get a chance, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You know I appreciate that. Check out the blog spot as well. And certainly enjoy the rest of your day, and definitely check us out again. Take care, folks.